The morning sky was gray, and the sound of church bells filled the air as people gathered for the funeral. A little girl named Emily stood quietly near the front row, her small hands clutching the worn sleeve of her dress. She was only 10 years old, but grief made her look older. Her father had always been her world, her protector, her friend, her teacher, and now he was gone. The scent of flowers mixed with the chill of the autumn breeze as the pastor spoke gentle words, but Emily could not stop her tears. She stared at the coffin, hardly able to believe her father was inside, never to speak to her again. Around her, people whispered and offered condolences. Neighbors, business associates, and old family friends came forward to show respect. But one person stood apart from the sorrow: Clara, Emily's stepmother. Clara wore a black dress and dabbed her eyes with a silk handkerchief, pretending to be heartbroken. Yet, when her eyes fell on Emily, there was no kindness, only coldness. She had never truly cared for the little girl, and now with Emily's father gone, Clara felt she no longer needed to keep up the act. After the service ended, the crowd slowly left the churchyard. Some stopped to pat Emily's head, telling her to be strong, but soon the words faded into silence. The girl found herself standing alone under the gray sky, clutching a small suitcase her father's friend had packed for her. She thought perhaps Clara would take her home and comfort her, but what happened instead shocked her to the core. Clara walked toward her, her heels tapping on the stones. "You don't belong with me anymore," she said sharply, her voice low enough so others would not hear. "Your father is gone, and I have no reason to keep you in my house. From now on, you will have to take care of yourself." Emily's eyes widened with fear. She had nowhere to go. But where will I live?" she whispered, her voice trembling. "That is not my problem," Clara replied coldly. She glanced around, making sure no one was paying attention, then pushed the suitcase closer to Emily. "Take your things and leave. Don't follow me." The little girl's heart broke once again. She had just lost her father, and now she was being abandoned by the only guardian left. She wanted to cry out, to beg for mercy, but she knew Clara's heart was hard. The woman had never shown her love, never tucked her into bed, never smiled at her the way her father once did. Emily lowered her head, fighting the tears that burned her eyes. The churchyard grew empty. The few cars that had been parked nearby slowly drove away, leaving behind only silence and the sound of leaves rustling in the wind. Emily stood by the gate, hugging her suitcase to her chest. She felt so small in the vast world, as though she might disappear altogether. At that moment, she heard the sound of an engine. A sleek black car rolled up to the church, its polished surface gleaming despite the dull sky. The door opened, and a tall man in a dark suit stepped out. His face was serious, yet his eyes softened when they landed on Emily. He had arrived late and had missed most of the funeral, but he had come for an important reason. The man's name was Mr. Harrison, a wealthy businessman who had once been her father's partner and loyal friend. He had been away traveling, and news of his friend's passing reached him only hours before. As he approached the churchyard, he expected to see a family standing together in mourning, but instead he saw a heartbreaking sight: a little girl alone, clutching a suitcase, her cheeks wet with tears. He slowed his steps, watching carefully. Clara was walking briskly toward her car, ignoring Emily as though she were a stranger. Something stirred in Mr. Harrison's chest: anger and disbelief. He remembered the promises he had made to his friend long ago: if anything ever happened, he would look out for the child. And here she was, abandoned at the very moment she needed love the most. Emily wiped her eyes and glanced up, noticing the tall figure approaching. She had seen him once before when her father introduced him at a dinner. She remembered her father's words: "This man is a good friend, Emily. Trust him." But she had been too young to understand much at that time. Now, in her loneliness, the sight of someone familiar felt like a tiny light of hope. Mr. Harrison crouched down to her level, his kind eyes searching her tear-stained face. "Emily," he said gently, "why are you standing here alone? Where is your stepmother?" Emily's lips trembled. She pointed weakly in the direction where Clara's car had just driven off. She told me I don't belong with her anymore," she whispered, her voice breaking. "She said I have to take care of myself now." For a moment, silence filled the air. Mr. Harrison's jaw tightened. He stood tall, anger flashing in his eyes. He could hardly believe Clara's cruelty, especially on the very day the child buried her father. Looking down at Emily again, he softened his tone. "You don't have to be afraid," he said firmly. "You are not alone." Emily blinked up at him, confused yet comforted by the certainty in his voice. "But where will I go?" she asked softly. Mr. Harrison placed a reassuring hand on her shoulder. "You will come with me," he said. "Your father was my dearest friend, and I gave him my word that I would look after you if anything ever happened. From this day, I will protect you." The little girl's heart swelled with a mixture of relief and disbelief. She had been cast aside like she was nothing, yet here was someone powerful, respected, and kind, telling her she was not forgotten. The wind carried away the last of the fallen leaves as she nodded slowly, holding onto his words as if they were a lifeline. Mr. Harrison picked up her small suitcase with ease and guided her toward his car. As he opened the door, he gave her a small smile. "You deserve better, Emily," he said. "And I promise you, your father's love will not be lost. I will make sure you are safe." Emily slid into the seat, her small frame sinking into the softness of the leather. For the first time since her father's passing, she felt a spark of warmth in her chest. She did not know what the future held, but she knew she was no longer alone. The gray sky above seemed just a little lighter as the car pulled away from the empty churchyard, carrying her toward an unknown but hopeful tomorrow. The black car moved slowly through the quiet streets as Emily sat silently in the back seat. Her small fingers played nervously with the handle of her suitcase, her eyes staring at the unfamiliar view outside. She still could not believe what had happened in just one day. In the morning, she had stood beside her father's coffin, saying goodbye forever. By the afternoon, she had been abandoned by the only guardian left to her. And now, within hours, she was being taken away by a man she barely knew, yet who spoke with such firmness and care that she wanted to trust him. Mr. Harrison sat beside her, his tall figure calm but watchful. Every now and then, he looked at Emily, noticing the way her shoulders trembled as she tried to hide her tears. He spoke softly, his voice steady like a warm blanket. "Emily, I know today has been the hardest day of your life. But you must remember something important: your father loved you with all his heart. He wanted only the best for you. And now, I will do my best to honor his wishes." Emily turned her head slowly toward him. "Did you really know my father well?" she asked, her voice small. "Yes," Mr. Harrison nodded, his eyes softening. "Your father and I worked together for many years. He was not only my partner but also my friend. He was an honest man, one of the rare ones you could trust with your life. We often spoke about you. He was so proud of you, Emily. He told me how clever you were at school and how much he loved to hear your laughter." Hearing those words made Emily's lips tremble again, but this time, the tears that rolled down her cheeks were not only of sadness, they carried a spark of comfort. He told you about me?" she asked. "Of course," Mr. Harrison replied. "He said you were the light of his life. And before he died, he asked me for one promise. He asked me to take care of you if something ever happened. I did not know it would come so soon, but I intend to keep my word." The car rolled to a stop before a large iron gate. As it opened slowly, Emily's eyes widened. Beyond the gate stretched a grand mansion surrounded by tall trees and a garden full of flowers, even in the cool air of autumn. The driveway curved like a ribbon, leading to the grand entrance where lights glowed warmly against the stone walls. Emily's breath caught. She had never seen such a place in her life. Her father's home had been small and modest, filled with love but never with luxury. Now, she was stepping into a world that looked like something from a storybook. Mr. Harrison noticed her astonishment. He smiled gently. "This is my home, Emily. From today, it will be yours too." The car stopped at the steps, and a servant quickly opened the door. Emily hesitated, clutching her suitcase tightly, afraid to step onto the polished stone. But Mr. Harrison extended his hand. "Don't be afraid. You are welcome here." Slowly, she placed her small hand into his, and he helped her out of the car. The tall doors opened, revealing a grand hall with shining floors, a chandelier sparkling above, and portraits hanging on the walls. The air was filled with the scent of roses. Emily's eyes grew wide as she turned in circles, trying to take in everything at once. A kind-looking woman in a neat uniform came forward and bowed slightly. "Welcome home, sir," she said to Mr. Harrison before glancing at Emily. "And welcome, young miss." Emily looked down, shy and uncertain. She did not feel like she belonged in such a place. She clutched her suitcase tighter, as if holding on to the last piece of her old life. Mr. Harrison noticed her unease and gently rested a hand on her shoulder. "Emily, this house may look big and strange now, but soon it will feel like home. You will have your own room, your own books, and people who care for you. But most of all, you will have me to guide you. You are not a guest here, you are family." Hearing those words sent a wave of warmth through Emily's chest. No one had ever spoken to her like that since her father passed. She nodded slightly, her eyes shining with cautious hope. One of the maids led her upstairs to a room prepared specially for her. The walls were painted a soft shade of blue, the curtains were long and flowing, and there was a bed covered with white sheets and a quilt decorated with tiny flowers. On the desk by the window stood a vase of fresh roses, as though someone had thought carefully about what might make a child feel welcome. Emily placed her suitcase on the bed and slowly opened it. Inside were just a few clothes and a small box where she kept her father's old watch and a photograph of him holding her when she was a baby. She touched the picture gently, whispering, "I miss you, Papa." A knock on the door made her turn. Mr. Harrison stepped inside, carrying a tray with a cup of warm milk and some bread. "I thought you might be hungry," he said kindly. Emily's eyes filled with tears again. No one had ever brought her food with such thoughtfulness since her father died. Clara had never cared whether she ate or not. She took the cup with trembling hands. "Thank you," she whispered. As she sipped, Mr. Harrison sat in the chair by the desk. "Emily, I want you to know something important. People like Clara may try to make you believe you are unwanted or unworthy. But they are wrong. You are valuable, you are loved, and you have a bright future. Your father wanted you to be strong, and I will help you find that strength." Emily listened closely, every word sinking deep into her heart. She had felt so unwanted just hours earlier, standing in the cold rain with nowhere to go. But now, this man, her father's friend, was speaking to her as if she mattered. For the first time since the funeral, she felt a fragile hope flicker inside her. Downstairs, however, Clara was not finished. Though she had abandoned Emily, she had no intention of losing control over the wealth and property her late husband had left behind. She had already begun whispering to her lawyer, planning how to contest the will. In her heart, she believed the little girl had no place in the inheritance, and she was ready to fight to keep it all for herself. But Clara did not know that Mr. Harrison had already promised Emily's father that he would guard both the child and her rights. His presence was not just out of kindness, it was also out of loyalty. He knew the truth of the will, and soon it would be revealed for everyone to see. As Emily finished her warm milk and curled into the quilt, Mr. Harrison stood and pulled the curtains closed. "Rest now, Emily," he said softly. You have been through enough today. Tomorrow will be a new day, and I promise you it will be better. The little girl nodded sleepily, her eyes heavy. She placed her father's picture under her pillow, whispering once more, "I'll be strong, Papa." Then she drifted into the first peaceful sleep she had known in weeks. Outside her door, Mr. Harrison paused for a moment, looking back at the sleeping child. His eyes grew determined. He knew that dark days might lie ahead, with Clara's greed and schemes. But one thing was certain, Emily would never again be left alone in the cold. He would stand by her side, no matter what it cost. The next morning sunlight streamed through the curtains of Emily's new room, painting the walls with a soft golden glow. For a moment she lay still, wondering if everything that happened yesterday had been a dream. The funeral, Clara's cruel words, the moment she stood alone with her suitcase, and the sudden kindness of Mr. Harrison all rushed back into her mind. Slowly, she sat up and looked around. The room was real, the soft bed beneath her was real, and the gentle silence of the house made her feel both safe and uncertain. She reached under her pillow and touched the picture of her father. "Good morning, Papa," she whispered. "I am still here, and I am trying to be brave." When she came downstairs, she found Mr. Harrison already waiting at the breakfast table. A spread of warm food was laid out: fresh bread, butter, fruit, and eggs. It was far more than she was used to seeing in the mornings. He smiled when she entered. "Good morning, Emily. Did you sleep well?" She nodded shyly, taking a seat. "Yes. Thank you." "Good," he said, his voice full of calm strength. "You will need your strength. There are many changes ahead, but I want you to know that every step, you will not be alone." Emily listened quietly as she ate. The taste of warm bread comforted her. She could feel something inside her slowly healing, though the wound of losing her father was still fresh. Later that day, Mr. Harrison gave her a tour of the mansion. They walked through long halls decorated with paintings, past a library filled with tall shelves of books, and into a garden with roses blooming despite the cool season. Emily marveled at everything, though she stayed close to him, afraid she might get lost in the vastness of the place. In the library, Mr. Harrison picked out a book and handed it to her. "Your father once told me you loved to read," he said. Emily ran her small hands over the cover, surprised. "He told you that?" "Yes," Mr. Harrison nodded. "He said your favorite evenings were when he read stories to you before bed. I hope we can continue that tradition." Her eyes grew wet again, but this time the tears carried warmth. "I would like that," she whispered. As days passed, Emily began to slowly settle into her new life. She discovered that the mansion was not only a house of wealth but also a place of kindness, at least under Mr. Harrison's care. The staff treated her with respect, always calling her Miss Emily and asking if she needed anything. At first she felt shy, unsure how to respond, but gradually she began to smile at them and say thank you. At night, she often sat by the window, holding her father's watch, wondering what he would say if he could see her now. She missed him deeply, but she began to believe his spirit was watching over her. She whispered her thoughts to the stars, telling him about her day and about Mr. Harrison's kindness. But beyond the safety of the mansion, shadows were forming. Clara was furious after seeing Emily taken in by Mr. Harrison. She had hoped to push the girl out of her life completely, but now Emily had found a protector, and not just any protector, but a wealthy man with influence and power. Clara feared this might threaten her own grip on her late husband's estate. Late one evening, Clara sat with her lawyer in her own home, her voice sharp and filled with bitterness. "I will not allow that child to take what belongs to me," she hissed. "Her father's will cannot possibly give her more than me. She is just a girl." The lawyer, an older man with cautious eyes, sighed. "Madam, from what I have seen, your husband's will may not favor you as much as you expect. He was clear about protecting his daughter's future. And with Mr. Harrison involved, it will be very difficult for you to win. Clara's face darkened. Then we must fight harder. There must be a way to twist the law in my favor. While Clara schemed, Emily was beginning to experience what it meant to be cared for without condition. One afternoon, Mr. Harrison took her to a school that stood tall and proud with children running across the playground. "This will be your new school," he told her. "It is one of the best in the city. You will have new friends here, and teachers who will encourage your talents." Emily's eyes widened in fear. "But, what if they don't like me?" she asked softly. Mr. Harrison knelt beside her. "Emily, you are smart and kind. People will see that. And even if some do not, you must remember you are never less than anyone else. You have every right to be here." Those words gave her courage, and though her steps were hesitant, she agreed to try. She was introduced to the headmistress, who smiled warmly and promised to help her adjust. Emily's heart raced, but she held on to Mr. Harrison's reassuring hand. That evening, when they returned home, Mr. Harrison found Emily standing once again by the window, staring at the stars. He walked over quietly and asked, "What are you thinking about, Emily?" She turned, her voice soft. "I was telling Papa about school. I hope he would be proud of me." Mr. Harrison placed a gentle hand on her shoulder. "He would be more than proud. And I am proud of you too." The days that followed brought both peace and tension. Peace, because Emily was slowly learning to smile again, to laugh when she read a funny story, to enjoy the warmth of the people around her. Tension, because rumors began to spread that Clara was preparing to challenge the will. Mr. Harrison knew a storm was coming, but he kept the worry hidden from Emily. He wanted her to feel safe, at least for now. One night, as he sat in his study, he opened a letter Emily's father had written before his death. In it were instructions about the inheritance and a personal plea: "Take care of my daughter as if she were your own. She is all I leave behind that truly matters." Reading those words strengthened Mr. Harrison's resolve. He would not allow Clara's greed to destroy what his friend had entrusted to him. Meanwhile, Clara grew restless. She began spreading lies, telling people that Emily was spoiled and ungrateful, that she did not deserve the life she was being given. Some believed her whispers, but others shook their heads, remembering the honest man Emily's father had been. They suspected Clara's words were poisoned by jealousy. Back at the mansion, Emily was beginning to blossom. She painted in the afternoons, read stories in the evenings, and sometimes played the piano in the grand hall, though she was still learning. Mr. Harrison often watched quietly, a faint smile on his lips, as though he could already see the strong and graceful young woman she would one day become. But even as she grew in comfort, she still had moments of fear. Sometimes she dreamed of Clara's cold voice telling her she was unwanted, and she woke in tears. Whenever this happened, Mr. Harrison would remind her, "Emily, those words were lies. You are wanted. You are loved. Never forget that." And slowly, with each passing day, Emily began to believe him. The day of the will reading arrived, and the atmosphere in the lawyer's office was tense. Emily sat quietly beside Mr. Harrison, her small hands folded in her lap. She was dressed neatly in a simple dress he had bought for her, but her eyes betrayed her nervousness. She did not fully understand the meaning of the meeting, but she could sense the weight in the air. Every movement seemed slow, every sound louder than usual. Across the room sat Clara, dressed in her finest clothes, her chin lifted high as if she already knew the outcome. She gave Emily a cold glance, one that made the little girl's stomach twist with fear. Clara whispered something to her lawyer, who leaned close and nodded with a serious expression. The lawyer in charge of the will, Mr. Thompson, adjusted his glasses and cleared his throat. The heavy silence deepened as he opened a folder filled with documents. "We are gathered here to read the final will and testament of Mr. Daniel Carter, he began, his voice steady. It is my duty to share with you his final wishes concerning his estate, his properties, and his shares in his business. Emily's heart thumped. She thought of her father, his smile, the way he used to ruffle her hair, and she prayed silently that he had not forgotten her. Mr. Thompson continued, Mr. Carter leaves his wife, Clara, with certain personal belongings and a financial allowance. However, he paused, and his eyes flickered toward Emily. The majority of his estate, including his shares in the business and his properties, are left in trust for his daughter, Emily Carter, to be managed until she reaches adulthood. The words hung in the air like a thunderclap. Clara's face froze, her smile vanishing as quickly as it had appeared. She slammed her hand on the table. This is nonsense, she shouted. How can a child inherit so much? I am his wife. This should belong to me. Emily flinched at Clara's outburst, her eyes filling with tears. She looked at Mr. Harrison, who placed a calm hand on her shoulder to reassure her. He remained firm, his voice cool but strong. Daniel knew exactly what he was doing. He wanted his daughter to be protected. And he trusted that his wealth should secure her future. The lawyer raised his hand, trying to calm the storm. Madam, the documents are legal and binding. Your husband was clear in his instructions. The estate belongs to Emily. As she is still a minor, the trust will be managed on her behalf until she comes of age. Clara's lawyer leaned close, whispering frantically in her ear, but her fury was uncontrollable. This child is nothing. She does not deserve what I worked for alongside him. Mr. Harrison's eyes sharpened, and for the first time his voice rang with anger. Enough. You may insult me if you wish, but you will not insult this child. Daniel's love for his daughter was the greatest truth of his life. To deny her now is to deny his memory. Emily's tears spilled over, but she sat up straighter, inspired by his words. For a moment, she saw her father's strength in Mr. Harrison, and it gave her courage. She whispered softly, Papa always said I should be brave. Clara's face turned red with rage. This is not over, she spat. I will contest this in court. I will not let a little girl and her so-called guardian steal everything from me. She rose to her feet, grabbing her bag and storming out of the office, her heels clicking furiously against the floor. Her lawyer hurried after her, looking flustered. Silence filled the room once again. Emily lowered her head, unsure of what would happen next. The world of adults seemed filled with battles she did not understand. She felt small, but at the same time, she sensed something important had just happened. Her father's voice, his wishes, had been honored through the will. Mr. Harrison leaned down, speaking softly to her. You did well today, Emily. You were calm and brave. Your father would be proud. She looked up at him, her eyes shining with tears. Will she really try to take everything? He nodded slowly. She will try, yes. But the truth is on your side. And I will fight for you, just as I promised your father. Emily took a deep breath. For the first time, she felt that she was not just a helpless child. She had something worth protecting, something her father had entrusted to her, and someone by her side who would not let her down. The following days were filled with whispers in town. News spread quickly that Clara had been left with only a small allowance while the young daughter inherited most of the fortune. Some people pitied Clara, but many shook their heads, remembering her cold behavior and the way she had treated Emily. They agreed that Daniel's decision was just. Clara, however, grew more desperate. She filed complaints and threatened lawsuits. She told anyone who would listen that Emily was spoiled and did not deserve her father's legacy. But her bitterness only made her more isolated. People began to avoid her, realizing her heart was filled with greed rather than grief. Meanwhile, Emily continued to grow stronger in her new life. She went to school, slowly making friends who admired her kindness and quiet strength. At home, she spent evenings in the library with Mr. Harrison, reading books together and learning about the world. She began to imagine a future where she could use her father's legacy not only for herself but also to help others. One evening, as she sat by the fire with Mr. Harrison, she asked softly, "Do you think Papa can see me now?" Mr. Harrison smiled gently. "I believe he can. And I believe he is proud of how brave you are. He trusted me to guide you, but the truth is you already carry his spirit inside you." Emily held his words close to her heart. She looked into the flames, remembering her father's voice, and felt a quiet strength growing inside her. But Clara was not finished. Late one night, she attempted to gain access to some of the estate documents, planning to alter them with false signatures. Her greed had pushed her beyond reason. But her actions were soon discovered, and evidence of her fraud reached the authorities. The whispers in town grew louder, and people began to see her true nature. Emily heard of this only later, when Mr. Harrison explained carefully. "She will try to take what is not hers, but the law is clear. And her dishonesty will only hurt her more. Do not fear, Emily. You are safe." Hearing those words, Emily nodded. For the first time, she felt certain that justice was on her side. Her father's love had built a shield around her, and with Mr. Harrison by her side, no amount of cruelty could break it. That night, she went to bed holding her father's photograph, whispering a promise. "Papa, I will protect what you left for me. I will not let anyone destroy your memory. I will be strong, just like you wanted." The stars outside her window seemed to shine a little brighter, as though they were listening. Weeks passed, and life slowly began to settle for Emily. The fear that had haunted her since her father's funeral started to fade, replaced by a quiet determination. She was no longer the helpless little girl who had been kicked out by her stepmother. She now understood that she had people who cared for her, people who would protect her, and most importantly, she carried her father's love and trust inside her. Emily spent her days learning about her father's business under Mr. Harrison's careful guidance. He taught her not just about money and property, but also about fairness, honesty, and the responsibility that came with wealth. "Remember, Emily," he said one afternoon as they walked through the large, sunlit office of her father's company, "wealth is not just about comfort or luxury. It is about the power to make lives better, to create opportunities, and to protect those who cannot protect themselves." Emily nodded seriously. She had begun to see that her father's fortune was more than just a sum of money. It was a tool, a chance to make a difference, and she felt proud that she had inherited not only the wealth but also the responsibility. Meanwhile, Clara's attempts to challenge the will had all failed. The court had reviewed every document, every statement, and every testimony. Her lies and threats were exposed, and the judge ruled firmly in Emily's favor. Clara's bitterness grew, but she found herself alone. People who had once seen her as glamorous now avoided her. Her greed and cruelty had driven friends away, and even her lawyer suggested she consider reconciliation, which she refused. She had burned too many bridges to go back. One crisp morning, Emily was sitting in the garden, watching the flowers bloom, when a letter arrived. She recognized the familiar handwriting immediately. It was from a charitable organization her father had supported. The letter thanked her for agreeing to continue his support and invited her to a meeting to discuss a new project to help children in need. Emily's heart swelled. She realized that her father had always wanted her to be kind, to help others, and she now had the chance to do just that. "Papa would be so happy," she whispered to herself, holding the letter close. Mr. Harrison approached and smiled. "He would be, Emily. And he would be proud of the choices you're about to make." Over the following months, Emily's life transformed. She became more confident, speaking with business partners, attending meetings, and making decisions alongside Mr. Harrison. She discovered her own strengths, her ability to listen carefully, to understand people, and to make wise choices. She began to see that being young did not mean being powerless. At school, Emily's classmates noticed the change too. She was no longer the timid little girl who avoided attention. She now carried herself with a quiet grace and confidence that inspired others. Some students came to her for advice, others to share their ideas, and slowly she built a small circle of friends who respected and cared for her. She shared nothing about the fortune she had inherited, choosing instead to let her kindness and intelligence speak for her. One afternoon, while Emily was reading in the library, a local journalist approached her with a kind smile. "Emily, would you like to share your story? Many people in town have heard about what happened with your stepmother, and they are inspired by your courage." Emily thought for a moment, then nodded. "Yes, but only if it can help other children. I don't want to talk about myself. I want to talk about how kindness, honesty, and bravery can change lives." The article was published, and Emily's story quickly spread. People admired her not for her wealth, but for her strength and spirit. Donations poured in for the charities she supported, and she began to feel that her father's legacy was not just hers, but something that could touch many lives. Then, one day, an unexpected visitor arrived at her home. It was Mr. Carter's old friend, Mr. Jameson, a well-known businessman and philanthropist. "Emily," he said warmly, "your father and I always dreamed of helping children like you, children who faced hardships but had hearts full of hope. I want to offer you an opportunity to join a special project we've been planning, one that could change many lives for the better." Emily's eyes sparkled with excitement. She listened carefully as Mr. Jameson explained a program that would provide education, healthcare, and support to children who had lost their parents or faced neglect. Emily realized that her father's wealth, combined with her own efforts, could truly make a difference. "I want to do it," she said without hesitation. "I want to help children like me." Mr. Jameson smiled, clearly impressed by her maturity and dedication. "Then let's begin." As Emily started to work on the project, she felt a sense of fulfillment she had never known before. Every child she helped reminded her of herself, of the fear and loneliness she had once felt. And every small victory, every smile she saw, made her father's presence feel stronger, as if he were guiding her every step. Meanwhile, Clara remained in the background, her bitterness consuming her. She had lost everything, and no one would stand by her side. Emily, however, never felt anger toward her stepmother. Instead, she felt pity, understanding that Clara's unhappiness had come from her own choices. Emily had chosen a different path, one of compassion, courage, and integrity. One evening, as Emily sat by the fireplace, she reflected on the journey she had traveled. From the moment she had been kicked out of her home, from the despair of losing her father, to the discovery of his will, and finally, to the life she now led, it had been a path of trials, lessons, and growth. She realized that her father's love had been the foundation for everything she had achieved. Mr. Harrison came to sit beside her. "Emily," he said softly, "you have grown into an extraordinary young girl. Your father would be proud of the person you've become. And the world is better because of you." Tears filled Emily's eyes, but this time they were tears of joy. She understood that wealth was not the measure of happiness, but love, courage, and kindness were. She had inherited more than money, she had inherited the heart and spirit of her father. In the following years, Emily's influence grew. She expanded the charity projects, supported schools, and helped children and families who had faced struggles similar to hers. She became a symbol of hope and determination, proving that even in the darkest moments, one could rise, guided by love and faith. On the anniversary of her father's passing, Emily stood by his grave, holding a small bouquet of flowers. She whispered, "Papa, I promised I would be strong. I promised I would honor your legacy. And I promised to keep helping others, just as you wanted." She felt the warm wind on her face, as if her father were smiling at her from above. Emily returned home that day, her heart full, knowing that she had not only inherited a fortune but also a purpose. She had turned a tragedy into a life of meaning, a story of courage, and a journey that would inspire many. And as the years went by, Emily Carter became known not just as the little girl who had been kicked out by her stepmother, but as a young woman who had transformed her pain into strength, her inheritance into hope, and her father's love into a legacy that would last forever.